please let us know. Now let's start with the story. My name is Brandon Sutton. I'm 32 years old, and I live in Las Vegas, Nevada, the city of lights, burning dreams, and bitter failures. I'm the eldest child of a wealthy family where the Sutton name is practically a brand, synonymous with success, lavish hotels, and dazzling casinos that shine through the night. But if you ask anyone in my family, they'll tell you I'm the failure, the black sheep of the lineage, the eldest son who never lived up to expectations. And believe me, I've heard those words enough times that they're etched into my mind like a scar that never heals. I was born in a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of Las Vegas, where every corner of the house exuded opulence. My father, Richard Sutton, is a tough man with a piercing gaze and a voice that could make anyone tremble. He is the chairman of Sutton Enterprises, a business empire that owns a string of hotels and casinos stretching across Nevada. My mother, Eleanor, is a refined woman, always appearing in expensive dresses with a perfect smile. But deep in her eyes, I've always sensed disappointment whenever she looks at me. Then there are Parker and Sydney, my younger siblings, the prized gems of the family, always cherished and trusted by our parents. Parker, 28, is a talented lawyer with a confident smile and a sharp wit in every word he speaks. Sydney, 26, is a renowned interior designer, landing major contracts with five-star hotels across the country. And me? I'm Brandon, the one who graduated from a prestigious business school but has never amounted to anything worthwhile. From a young age, I felt the weight of expectations pressing down on me. As the eldest, I was expected to take over my father's empire, to become a better version of him. During tense family dinners, my father would often look across the table and fix me with that hard stare of his. "Brandon," he'd say, his tone leaving no room for argument, "you are the future of the Sutton family. Don't let me down." And every time I heard those words, I felt my heart tighten. I didn't want to be just a shadow of my father. I wanted to create something of my own, a unique mark, something people would remember when they heard the name Brandon Sutton, not just Richard Sutton's son. I tried. I really did. In college, I was an outstanding student, always at the top of my class. I dreamed of building my own business, independent of the Sutton name. After graduating, I dove into startup ventures with all the passion of youth. First, there was a small coffee shop in downtown Las Vegas. The idea was to combine an artistic space with live music, a place where creativity could flourish. I spent months designing the menu, choosing furniture, even painting the walls myself. I still remember standing there one evening, brush in hand, paint splattering on my jeans as I explained my vision to a friend. "I want this place to feel alive," I told him. "I want people to walk in and feel like they can breathe here, like their art matters." He nodded, though a bit uncertain. "Sounds ambitious, Brandon. You sure the numbers add up?" I shrugged, a spark of excitement burning in my chest. "I'll make them add up." But I couldn't. The shop lasted only 6 months before shutting down due to a lack of customers. Then I tried my hand at a tech app, a platform to connect street artists with tourists. I poured thousands of dollars into it, only to realize the market wasn't ready for my idea. The world just didn't seem to see what I saw, a place for street artists to connect, to thrive, to share their art with people who might actually care. When that dream collapsed, I barely had time to breathe before I moved on to the next. Next came a high-end fashion boutique, where I hoped to bring unique designs to life, to spark something fresh and unforgettable. I had visions of bold colors, intricate fabrics, a boutique that could compete with the best on the strip. I invested everything I had left, convinced that this time I'd finally found the path. But once again, I failed. Customers never came. My grand opening was a ghost town, and within a few months, I'd lost nearly all my savings. Each time I failed, my family was there, watching, mocking. My father never needed to say it outright. Those cold, disappointed eyes of his were enough. They drilled through me like blades, silently reminding me that I was a disgrace to the family name. My mother tried to be gentler, but that somehow hurt even worse. "Brandon," she'd say over coffee, her manicured hands carefully wrapped around an expensive porcelain cup, "why don't you try working for your father's company? It would be easier." Easier? I tried to keep the bitterness out of my voice, but I couldn't. "That's not what I want, Mom." She sighed, looking past me like she couldn't bear to see me. "It's a good life, Brandon. You wouldn't have to struggle so much." "I don't want to live someone else's life," I told her, but the words fell flat, as if she hadn't heard them. Parker and Sydney were even worse. They relished every opportunity to twist the knife during family gatherings. "Hey, Brandon," Parker would tease, swirling a glass of whiskey, his grin sharp. "What's the next big thing you're opening?" "A bakery, maybe." Sydney would giggle, flipping her perfect hair over her shoulder. "Or a film production company." "Oh, I bet it'll go bankrupt in 3 months." They laughed, pretending it was all harmless fun, but I knew they believed every cruel word. I could see it in their eyes, that certainty that I would never be anything more than the family failure. I don't entirely blame them. I understand why they think that way. After all, Parker with his high-profile lawsuits, Sydney with her magazine spreads about her luxury designs, they had their trophies on display for the world to applaud. I was just the clumsy older brother who couldn't stop tripping over his own dreams. But that didn't mean their words didn't hurt. Every jab, every scornful look, felt like a knife cutting deeper into me, slicing away what little confidence I had left. Some nights, I'd lie awake in my small rented apartment on the edge of town, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if they were right. Maybe I really was as useless as they said. Maybe I was born just to be a backdrop for other people's success. But deep down, there's still something in me that refuses to die, a stubborn spark that believes I can do something meaningful. I don't want to be just an employee in my father's company, chained to a safe, lifeless routine, living in his shadow, answering to him for the rest of my life. That would kill me slowly, piece by piece. I want to stand on my own. I want to prove I'm not the failure they think I am. I want them to look at me one day and admit they were wrong. Maybe it's arrogance. Maybe it's stubbornness. But it's the only flame that keeps me moving forward, even when everything else seems to fall apart. My apartment, far from the family mansion's gold and crystal, is modest, with a small bedroom, a cramped kitchen, and a second-hand sofa I picked up from a thrift store. But there, at least, I feel free. I can be myself, without comparisons, without the endless chorus of why can't you be more like Parker. I often sit by the window, looking out at the sea of neon lights, dreaming of the day I'll create something that makes this city turn its head. But every time I start a new project, the fear of failure crawls into my mind, whispering in my ear, "You'll fail again, Brandon. You're not good enough." I've thought about giving up. I really have. Once, after the tech app collapsed, I sat in my tiny office, staring at the red loss figures on my computer screen, my stomach in knots. Maybe my parents were right, I thought. Maybe I should give up my dreams, take a job at my father's company, and live a safe, predictable life. But every time that thought creeps in, a part of me screams in protest. I don't want to live a life I don't believe in. I want to rise on my own, no matter how hard the path may be. My family wasn't always so cold. There were moments, back when I was a kid, when I felt their love, warm, genuine, unburdened by expectations. I still remember those evenings when my father would take me to baseball games, just the two of us. We'd sit in the stands with hot dogs and sodas, and he'd tell me stories about the early days of building Sutton Enterprises from scratch, how he hustled, how he risked everything to get where he was. His eyes would shine then, proud, alive. My mother, too, once felt softer. She used to sit with me on the edge of my bed, reading me fairy tales, brushing the hair from my forehead, telling me in that gentle voice, "Brandon, you can be anything you want." But somewhere along the line, as I grew older and my failures began to pile up, that warmth faded. All that was left was the weight of expectation and the sting of sharp criticism. Las Vegas, with all its glamour and spectacle, is a strange place to grow up. This city is built on dreams, but it's also littered with the corpses of broken ones. I've seen countless people come here, chasing a better life, only to leave empty-handed, their souls crushed under neon promises. I don't want to be one of them. But with every failure, I feel myself inching closer to that fate. Then came a day I didn't know would change everything. I was sitting on my worn-out sofa, staring at an unpaid electric bill propped up on the coffee table, feeling like it was mocking me, when the phone buzzed. It was Joel. We weren't particularly close, Joel and I, more business acquaintances than friends. We'd met after college, circled around a few projects, but nothing ever stuck. His voice on the line was electric, practically vibrating with excitement. "Brandon," he blurted out, barely letting me say hello, "I've got something for you." I rubbed my eyes, my voice heavy and bored. "Joel, if this is another crazy idea like the mobile taco stand, I'm out." He laughed, loud and unbothered, like he was already counting money. No, this is different, trust me. I'm talking about real estate." I raised an eyebrow, even though no one could see me. "Real estate? Yeah," he said, dropping the hook. "An old gas station out near Route 95. Dirt cheap. Brandon, 20 grand. Can you believe it? A real steal." I shifted on the sofa, not exactly excited, but curious. A gas station? Out in the middle of nowhere? "Joel, who the hell buys an abandoned gas station in a place even coyotes don't bother visiting?" "That's the point, Brandon." Joel's tone shifted into that slick, smooth pitch I'd heard too many times before. "The state's about to build a new highway through there. I got a tip from an inside source. A big real estate conglomerate is already eyeing the land. They're planning to build a resort, maybe even a shopping center. That gas station will be right in the middle of it all. I stayed quiet, letting him build it up. Buy it now, he continued, voice brimming with confidence. Fix it up a bit, and you can sell it for 10 times what you paid. Or even better, run it yourself and turn it into a gold mine. I went silent for a moment, trying to process the information. Joel always had a way of making everything sound like a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, but deep down I knew he wasn't exactly trustworthy. He was a broker, sure, but not the kind of honest, steady broker you'd want handling your future. Joel was tall, with slicked back hair, a dazzling grin that could charm just about anyone, and cheap suits tailored to look expensive. Everything about him screamed flash over substance. Joel, I don't have $20,000, I told him, my voice tired and rough. My account's in the red. I still owe this month's rent. Then borrow it. Joel shot back, like it was the simplest thing in the world. Brandon, you're a Sutton. Your family has money. Ask your parents, or your siblings. This is your chance to prove you're not. Well, you know what they say about you. I felt the blood rush to my face, hot and painful. Joel knew all about my family's constant mockery, and he had no problem poking that raw nerve. Don't bring my family into this. I snapped, anger flaring up. I'm not asking them for money. You know what they think of me. All right, Joel soothed, but I could practically hear the smirk behind his calm tone. Listen, Brandon, I'm doing this for you. I could sell this gas station to anyone, but I want you to have this opportunity. 20,000 is a bargain. I negotiated with the landowner to get it down to this price. They want to sell fast, and I'm holding it for you. But you've got to decide quickly, or they'll sell to someone else. I closed my eyes, trying to think straight. An abandoned gas station in the middle of nowhere sounded insane. But Joel's talk about the new highway and big developers circling the area, it rattled me, made my pulse spike. I'd failed so many times. And the thought of finally turning my life around, of proving I wasn't a failure, it grabbed hold of me like a vice. But 20,000? That was a fortune for me. Let me think about it, I managed. No time, Brandon. Joel pressed, his voice sharpening with urgency. I'm serious. There's someone else asking about it. I'm only prioritizing you because we're friends. You've got 48 hours. Just call me back when you decide, okay? The call ended, and I sat there, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to call him back right then and say no, slam the door on another possible disaster. But another part, the desperate part, couldn't stop imagining the possibility. A gas station, an opportunity, a chance to stand in front of my family and finally say I did it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced around my cramped apartment, my mind a whirlwind of numbers and daydreams. I didn't have 20 grand, but I could borrow it. I knew a few wealthy friends who might lend it to me without blinking. But it wasn't the money that made me hesitate the most. It was Joel. That slick grin, those two perfect words, they gnawed at me. The next morning, I decided I had to see the place for myself. Joel agreed to meet me at a small cafe before taking me to the site. When I walked in, he was already there, dressed in a wrinkled gray suit that tried a bit too hard, sipping coffee and scrolling through his phone. As soon as he saw me, he stood up with that grin plastered across his face and slapped me on the shoulder. Brandon, you made it. He laughed, that salesman sparkle in his eyes. I knew you wouldn't pass this up. On the drive to the gas station, Joel wouldn't stop talking. He rattled on and on about the highway, the investors, the way money was pouring into that corridor, how this old gas station was a diamond in the rough I could polish into solid gold. Brandon, think about it, he said, hands on the steering wheel. Once the highway cuts through, traffic will be insane. Gas, snacks, maybe even a diner. You could kill it, man. I nodded, mostly to shut him up, but inside, a knot of doubt was tightening in my gut. When we finally pulled off the dusty road and stopped, my heart sank. The place looked like a tomb. The pumps were rusted, leaning like dying soldiers. The convenience store's windows were smashed through, glass scattered across the floor inside. The roof sagged so badly it seemed one good gust would send it crashing down. Weeds had choked everything around the building, sprouting up through cracks in the asphalt. An old sign that read Desert Star swung weakly in the hot wind, the letters so faded you could barely read them. This wasn't a diamond in the rough. It was a pile of junk. Joel, are you kidding me? I turned to him, fighting to keep my voice calm. This is worth $20,000. He laughed, a forced laugh, his eyes darting away from mine. Brandon, you've got to see the bigger picture. Don't you get it? When the highway opens, this place will be the center of everything. You just need to invest a little to fix it up, then boom, a gold mine. I narrowed my eyes at him, trying to pin him down. Joel, be honest. Are you sure this is a steal, or are you just trying to make a commission off me? He clutched at his chest like I'd shot him. Brandon, you think I'm that kind of guy? I'm your friend. I'm doing this for you. 20,000 is the price I negotiated down from 30, okay? The landowner wants to sell fast. I fought to keep this price for you. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him. But there was something in the way he talked. Too fast, too polished, too slippery. The way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. It made my skin crawl with unease. But then, in a split-second flash, I thought of my family, their mocking, my father's cold, disappointed stare. I thought of every time I'd come crawling back in shame, with another failure hanging around my neck. Maybe, just maybe, this was the one gamble that would change everything. It took me 2 days to scrape the money together. I borrowed from an old friend, promising I'd pay him back soon, and took out a loan against my apartment. When the bank deposit finally cleared, I felt sick. I called Joel. I'll do it, I told him. Awesome. Joel practically yelled through the phone, excitement sizzling through every word. Brandon, you won't regret this. This is your turning point, man. The sale went through faster than I thought possible. Joel took me to a real estate lawyer's office. The lawyer barely looked up from his desk, his pen already poised. He asked only a few rushed questions before pushing the papers my way. I signed. I handed over the money. And just like that, I was holding the keys to the Desert Star gas station in my hand. For a moment, standing outside the lawyer's office, I felt something. A strange mix of excitement and fear. This was mine. Really mine. But that feeling didn't last. At a rare family dinner I was forced to attend, I told them about what I'd done. The moment the words left my mouth, my father let out a harsh, mocking laugh that made me flinch. An abandoned gas station? Brandon, are you serious? What have you thrown your money into this time? My mother tried to be gentler, but her voice still dripped disappointment. Brandon, she sighed, her hand resting on mine in a way that felt more pitying than comforting. You should work for your father's company. Why do you keep chasing these foolish ideas? My mother asked, her voice dripping with disappointment, her perfect smile nowhere in sight. Parker, of course, didn't miss his chance to twist the knife. Brandon, I bet that gas station will be the graveyard of your career. You should name it Brandon's tomb. Sydney giggled beside him, eyes sparkling with mockery. I'll design a sign for you, free of charge. I sat there gripping my fork and knife so tightly I thought they might snap in my hands. Rage burned in my chest, so hot I wanted to scream, to throw it all back in their faces and tell them I will prove you wrong. But the words stuck in my throat, and all I could do was swallow my anger and promise myself that one day, they'd see. A few days later, I drove out to the gas station with nothing but a toolbox and a tiny sliver of hope. As I stepped inside the Desert Star's old convenience store, the smell of dust and mildew almost made me gag. I looked around at the bare, rotting shelves, at the cracked walls and sagging ceiling, and doubt crawled into my mind like a poison. I paid $20,000 for this. My chest tightened, fear gnawing at me as I wondered if Joel had been honest at all. Weeks later, my fears were confirmed, and then some. A friend of mine in the real estate business called me one afternoon after I'd asked him to take a look at my investment. His voice was hesitant. Brandon, he said, almost carefully, that property was listed at $3,000. 3,000, man. Before Joel helped you negotiate. I froze, the phone growing heavy in my hand. 3,000. I managed to choke out, the words tasting like acid. Yeah, he sighed. I checked the listing history. Joel must have flipped the price on you. I'm sorry, bro. I hung up, my ears ringing, my vision blurring as the truth crashed over me like a tidal wave. The whole thing, Joel's excitement, his talk about investors, his phony negotiations, it was a lie. He'd played me for a fool, inflated the price by multiples, pocketed the difference, and called it friendship. I felt sick. I was standing inside the Desert Star's filthy, crumbling store when I dialed Joel's number. My hands were shaking. Ring, 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 straight to voicemail. I tried again. Straight to voicemail. Again. Nothing. Each unanswered call was like a knife twisting deeper into the last bit of pride I had left. Joel had vanished, just like that, leaving me with a worthless wreck and a bleeding heart. I slumped into an old, dust-covered chair, my mind reeling. The smell of stale motor oil and mold filled my nose, suffocating me with the reality that I was stuck with this place, this joke of a business I'd been conned into. How could I be so stupid? I thought, grinding my teeth, my fists clenched at my sides. Joel had known exactly what strings to pull, my desperation, my hunger to prove myself, my terror of being laughed at by my family. He'd used it all against me. All those times he'd slapped me on the shoulder, laughed, called me buddy, it had all been an act. I let him manipulate me like a puppet. I looked out through the broken window, the desert sun glaring back at me, and wondered if I should just cut my losses. Sell this dump for whatever I could get, go back to Las Vegas, and beg for a job at my father's company. At least I wouldn't be poor, At least I wouldn't have to struggle anymore. But then I thought of my father's cold, disappointed stare. I thought of Parker's smug grin. I thought of Sydney giggling, telling me she'd make me a sign for Brandon's tomb. If I gave up now, they'd have the final laugh forever. I'd be nothing but a walking punchline, with no shred of dignity left. No. I stood up, wiping the sweat off my forehead. My jaw clenched so hard it ached. I looked around at the broken tiles, the crumbling walls, the desert trying to reclaim it. Even if Joel scammed me, even if I made a mistake, I can't stop now. Desert Star was my last chance. My only chance. And I had to fight for it, no matter what. The days that followed were a grueling string of hard labor. I started by cleaning the convenience store, where dust and cobwebs had claimed every corner like squatters who'd never leave. The shelves, coated in a thick layer of grime, looked like relics from a time long dead. I brought an old broom, a battered bucket, and some cheap cleaning supplies from a dollar store down the road. I scrubbed the stained floors until my arms ached, wiped down the shattered window panes, and tried to patch the leaking roof with scavenged metal sheets that rattled in the wind. Every sweep of the broom, every drop of sweat that hit the cracked tile, felt like a declaration of war against all the doubts tearing at me. The Desert Star gas station, the name still made me wince, stood alone under the harsh Nevada sun, squatting in the emptiness like a ghost. Route 95 ran beside it, but the road was practically abandoned. Now and then, a lone truck would roar past, kicking up a choking cloud of dust that drifted through the gaps in the window frames. Every time I saw the empty road, the same cold question stabbed at me. What if Joel lied about the highway? What if it was all just another story to squeeze the last dollars out of me? My gut twisted, but I forced myself to keep going. You've come this far, Brandon. You can't turn back now. I worked on fixing whatever I could, however I could. The gas pumps were completely shot, their pipes rusted and brittle. I didn't have money to replace them new, so I scoured a nearby junkyard for scraps, learning how to rebuild them through YouTube videos on my cracked phone. I was no mechanic, but desperation is one hell of a teacher. Some days I worked from sunrise until nearly midnight, my hands raw and stinging, covered in scratches, rust, and motor oil. But I didn't stop. Every time something came back to life, a pump humming, a flickering light bulb fighting the darkness in the store, I felt like I was clawing back a tiny piece of my dignity. Then came the afternoon when everything changed. I'd been wrestling for a week with a leaking water pipe under the store's floor. Water kept seeping through, turning a corner of the room into a stinking swamp. I couldn't afford a plumber. So I told myself, screw it, I'll do it myself. I armed myself with a wrench and a cheap little shovel and started digging. The floor was old, cracked concrete, stubborn and heavy. Every chunk I broke away left me coughing in a cloud of dust, sweat dripping into my eyes. But I kept going. I had to fix that pipe. If the store flooded, everything I'd worked for would wash away. After what felt like hours, my shovel hit something that didn't sound like concrete. It rang, a high, sharp clank that sent a jolt through my arms. I froze, panting, staring at the hole. I crouched down, brushing the dust away with my filthy hands. Beneath the broken concrete was a wooden panel, old and dark, so out of place it made my heart hammer. It looked like a trapdoor, embedded right in the foundation. A hidden storage space? I wondered, adrenaline suddenly flooding my veins. Or just a worthless board rotting under here. I reached out, my fingertips tracing the rough grain of the wood. The panel was held in place by rusted nails, so corroded they looked ready to fall apart. What the hell is this doing here? I swallowed, gripped my wrench, and started prying them out one by one. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might leap right out of my chest. When I finally lifted that last piece of wood, a cold breath of air whooshed up at me from the void below, smelling of damp wood and, weirdly, something almost sweet, like aged wine. I aimed my phone's flashlight down, the weak beam trembling in my grip. There, disappearing into the dark, was a narrow staircase, wood so rotted it looked like a stiff breeze could turn it to splinters. For a second, I froze. Every rational part of me wanted to slam that panel shut, finish fixing the pipe, and pretend this never existed. But another part of me, the curious part, the reckless part that had dragged me this far, refused to walk away. You've already gambled everything on this place, I told myself. Might as well see it through. So I gripped the rail and started down. Each step gave a protesting squeal, threatening to dump me straight into the darkness, but I forced my legs to keep moving. When I reached the bottom, I lifted the light, and my breath caught. The cellar wasn't huge, maybe 200 square feet, but every inch was crammed with crates and shelves stacked with dusty wine bottles, some still sealed, others lying on their sides like they'd been perfectly placed by a careful hand. Cobwebs clung to the glass, a fine lace of neglect and time. I stepped forward, sweeping the light across the shelves. The labels were faded, ink smudged, but a few names still jumped out at me, carrying a weight I didn't have to be a wine expert to recognize. Chateau Petrus, Domaine Perignon, Lafite Rothschild. My heart started pounding even harder. These weren't random table wines, these were legends. Slowly, like I was handling a live grenade, I knelt beside one of the crates. I reached in and lifted a bottle, wiping away the years of dust with my sleeve. Under the grimy film, blocky script emerged. Chateau Petrus 1921. 1921. I felt a tremor go through my whole body. I might not have been a sommelier, but I knew enough to understand that this was beyond rare. I put it down, hands shaking, and swept the light across the cellar again. There had to be hundreds of bottles, maybe more, stacked up in the crates along the walls. Some crates even had elaborate carved marks I couldn't quite make out in the dim glow. What is this place? How in the hell could a treasure trove like this be buried under a rotting gas station in the middle of nowhere? My mind raced. This place had been abandoned for decades, long before Joel had conned me into buying it. Maybe this goes all the way back to Prohibition, I thought, breathing hard. Bootleggers. Secret stashes. I'd read about it, how smugglers hid top-shelf liquor in basements and hidden rooms, hoping to sneak it past the law. Maybe they'd died, or been arrested, and left this fortune sealed up and forgotten. I stood again, trying to calm my racing heart. If even one of these bottles was real, and I had no reason to doubt they were, this could be worth more than I'd ever dreamed of. I reached for another crate, the wood creaking like an old joint, and eased it open. More bottles, packed tight and sealed with red wax, like they'd been bottled just yesterday. I picked up another bottle, brushing off the label. 1928. A grin spread across my face, wild and unbelieving. I could practically hear my father's voice in my head, talking at one of his endless parties about rare wine auctions in Las Vegas, collectors throwing down hundreds of thousands of dollars for a single rare bottle. If each bottle in that cellar was worth what I'd seen online, the entire stash could be worth tens of millions. Tens of millions. The thought almost made me dizzy, but then a wave of doubt washed over me, cold and sharp. I was Brandon Sutton, the family's cautionary tale, the punchline. The one who tripped over every so-called opportunity that came my way. What if this was just another illusion? Maybe the bottles were worthless fakes, dumped and forgotten for a reason. I tried to steady my breathing. I didn't know enough about wine to trust my own eyes. That ignorance scared me. Still, I couldn't let go of the hope. I climbed back up the rickety stairs to the convenience store, my boots leaving dusty prints on each step. I went to my tool bag, pulled out an old, battered notebook, and sat down on the floor to start making sense of what I'd found. I began writing, counting bottles, labeling crates, scribbling down what names I could still read by the glow of my phone. My hand shook as I wrote, not from cold, but from this strange cocktail of hope and terror swirling inside me. If this is real, if it's even halfway real, I didn't know what to do next, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't just run to an auction house and start waving bottles around. I needed to verify this properly. That night, I packed a few bottles carefully in a cardboard box, cushioning them with old towels like they were priceless gems. Back in my cramped apartment, I placed them gently on the kitchen table and sat down, staring at them. I opened my laptop and started searching every term I could think of: vintage wine values, Prohibition cellar, Chateau Petrus auction records. When the results came up, I could barely believe them. A Chateau Petrus 1921 had gone for $150,000 at a New York auction. A Dom Perignon 1928, if perfectly preserved, could fetch $80,000. And I didn't just have one or two of these bottles. I had hundreds, maybe even thousands. If even a fraction were authentic, I might be sitting on a literal fortune. I leaned back, staring at the screen until my eyes burned, the numbers swimming before me. This was the chance I'd been starving for, the miracle I'd almost given up on. But then the fear came crawling in, cold and relentless. Can you handle this, Brandon? Or will you screw it up like every other time? I slammed the laptop shut and stood, pacing across my tiny living room, fists clenching and unclenching. I needed a plan. A real plan. I couldn't tell anyone yet. I couldn't risk another betrayal, another Joel. Blind trust was poison. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. Keep this secret, I told myself. At least until you know exactly what you're dealing with. The next morning, I drove back to Desert Star with a completely new mindset. That dark, damp cellar no longer felt like a rotting tomb. It felt like a vault. A chance to rewrite my story. I spent hours underground, inspecting every bottle, every crate. Some had shattered over the years, leaking away their fortune, but most were intact, the wax seals still shockingly firm. While I was checking one crate near the back wall, I noticed something odd jammed between two wooden planks. I reached in and tugged it free. A small, leather-bound notebook, its cover soft with rot. I flipped it open, careful not to tear its fragile yellowed pages. Inside, looping handwriting stretched across the paper, old ink, still legible. It was a record. Transactions, dates, quantities of bottles moved in and out. And then, on the next page, a list of recipients' names. I realized this gas station had likely been a hub in a bootlegging network long ago. As I stood there in the cellar, surrounded by crates stacked like secrets, I could almost picture it. Men in long coats, headlights off, rolling up in battered trucks in the dead of night. Bottles hidden under floorboards, crates carried down into this damp hole before vanishing into the city. Desert Star wasn't just a gas station. It was a living artifact, a dusty relic of a wild, chaotic era. That idea burned in my mind even as I climbed back to the convenience store, my boots scuffing the steps. It was more than money. This place had history. But I needed answers. I couldn't just keep daydreaming about buried treasure. I had to know if these bottles were real. So I turned to the only path that made sense. That night, I searched online until my eyes ached, looking for a wine expert who wouldn't ask too many questions. Finally, I found a reputable auction house in downtown Las Vegas, one that specialized in vintage bottles. I dialed the number, heart pounding. "Hello, this is the appraisal desk," a man answered, his voice deep, polished. I swallowed hard. "Hi, I have a few old bottles. I'd like them appraised." "What kind of bottles?" "Vintage wine," I said carefully. "From a property I recently purchased." I left it at that. No mention of Desert Star. No mention of the trapdoor. There was a pause on the other end, then. "All right," the man replied. "Bring them in. I can look at them Tuesday morning." After I hung up, I sat staring at my phone, wondering if I'd just made a mistake. But there was no turning back. The night before the meeting, I went down to the cellar again. The place felt almost like a tomb, the silence heavy. I picked 3 bottles, one Chateau Petrus 1921, one Dom Perignon 1928, and a third with a handwritten label that looked impossibly old. I wrapped them in rags, then found a small wooden box in the corner of the cellar, packing them like priceless artifacts. When I finally left, box under my arm, every pothole on Route 95 felt like a death sentence. My hands were locked on the wheel, each bump making me flinch, terrified the bottles would shatter. I reached the auction house right at opening. The lobby was bright, polished, smelling of fresh paper and lemon floor cleaner. People in expensive suits drifted past, eyes cold and calculating. I stepped up to the reception desk, holding the box like it might explode. "I'm here for Mr. Clark," I said, voice tight. They led me into a back room, paneled in dark wood, lined with framed auction photos. There, waiting at a long table, was Harrison Clark, a legend in the wine world. He had perfectly trimmed silver hair, gold-rimmed glasses perched on a dignified nose, and eyes that looked like they could see right through me. "Mr. Sutton." I nodded, throat dry. "Let's see what you've brought." I set the box on the table and opened it with trembling fingers. Mr. Clark reached in, so carefully, as if he were touching holy relics. He turned each bottle under the light, his face blank, but I noticed, just for a moment, a tiny tremor in his hand as he examined the Chateau Petrus 1921. "You say you found these bottles in a property?" he asked, glancing up, his tone low and cautious. I tried to stay calm, to look casual. "Yes, sir. Just a property I bought recently." He studied me for a moment, then leaned back, took off his glasses, and sighed. "Mr. Sutton," he began, "I don't know where you found these bottles, but I can tell you they're genuine. And they are extremely rare." My heart leapt. He continued, voice steady but intense. "A Chateau Petrus 1921 in good condition could easily fetch $150,000 at auction. The Dom Perignon 1928 is no less impressive, somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000. He turned to the last bottle, frowning as he read the handwritten label. "As for this one," he murmured, "I'd need to verify further. But it might be part of a Prohibition-era batch. If you have more bottles like these." He paused, looking me straight in the eye. "You're sitting on a treasure." I felt the blood rush to my head as if the world was tilting. "You're saying how much?" I stammered, struggling to get the words out. Mr. Clark didn't even flinch. His tone was as steady as if he were discussing the weather. "These 3 bottles alone could bring in several $100,000, he explained patiently. "But if you have more, a full collection, the value could reach millions." Millions? My brain froze. My mouth went dry. Mr. Clark leaned forward slightly, studying me. "How many more bottles do you have, Mr. Sutton?" I hesitated. The urge to blurt out hundreds clawed at my tongue, but the memory of Joel, of being scammed and humiliated, burned through me. I had to be careful. "I'm not sure." I lied, keeping my voice even. I need to check again. He raised an eyebrow, but nodded politely. Well, if you want my help appraising and selling them, he continued, you'll need to bring me the full inventory eventually. I can connect you with serious international collectors. They will pay top dollar for authentic bottles like these. I exhaled, a shaky breath I hadn't realized I was holding. Can you help me do this discreetly? I asked, voice low. Mr. Clark's face broke into a reassuring smile, the first hint of warmth since we'd met. Of course, Mr. Sutton. Absolute confidentiality is my standard. I left his office in a fog, torn between exhilaration and raw, gnawing anxiety. Mr. Clark had promised to keep it private, but this was Las Vegas, a city built on whispers, where secrets never stayed buried for long. As I drove back to Desert Star that afternoon, the bottle box rattling gently on the passenger seat, I felt a surge of protectiveness. I pulled up to the dusty gas station and immediately checked the cellar entrance, testing the padlock with shaking hands. Secure for now. I started sketching a plan in my notebook that night, sitting in my cramped apartment by the glow of a flickering lamp. I needed a security team, cameras, reinforced locks, but I didn't have the cash for any of that. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, I lived like a machine. I worked from sunrise to long after midnight, hauling crates from the cellar, checking labels, photographing every bottle, taking them to Mr. Clark for verification. Each visit ended the same way, with him telling me they were genuine and that their value was astronomical. One afternoon, he looked over a fresh batch and let out a low whistle. Mr. Sutton, he said gravely, conservatively, you are sitting on $50 million, perhaps more. The number felt like it might break me. 50 million. I, Brandon Sutton, the failure, the joke of family dinners, was sitting on a treasure that could change everything. I decided to take it slow. I couldn't afford to be reckless. Mr. Clark, I asked one day, voice tight with nerves, can we start small? Maybe auction just 10 bottles first? I want to see how it goes. He nodded, respectful. A wise decision. I'll organize a discreet auction for a select group of collectors. The night of that first auction, I nearly had a panic attack. I wore a borrowed suit that didn't quite fit, standing awkwardly by the wall of a five-star hotel ballroom. I felt like an imposter among a sea of billionaires and socialites. When the first bottle, the Chateau Petrus 1921, went up, I couldn't breathe. The auctioneer's voice echoed through the gilded hall. Opening at $100,000. A paddle shot up. Then another. Within minutes the price had soared. $180,000 sold. My head spun. By the end of the night, the 10 bottles had brought in over $1.2 million. I stared at the numbers on the contract Mr. Clark handed me, my hand trembling so badly I almost dropped the pen. With that money, I set to work immediately. First, I paid off everything, every cent I owed to my friends, the bank, the landlord, the collectors circling me like vultures. Gone. Then I hired a security team, 24 hours, armed guards, cameras, alarms, reinforced doors. Desert Star was no longer just a crumbling gas station. It was a fortress. Next, I fixed the roof, replaced the gas pumps with modern ones, turned the convenience store into a gleaming, minimalist showroom. Right in the center, under perfect lighting, I built a high-end wine counter that displayed a few pristine bottles like museum pieces. I wanted visitors to feel the story of Prohibition. The hidden tunnels, the danger, the thrill. Each bottle was a relic, and I would treat them like sacred history. For 6 months, I barely slept. Mr. Clark and I organized 3 more private auctions, each one bigger than the last. When the final gavel fell, I had earned over $30 million from these sales, a figure that left me dizzy every time I checked my bank account. With that money, I bought more land around Desert Star, banking on what Joel had told me about the highway. For once, at least that part of his pitch hadn't been a lie. In early 2023, construction crews finally broke ground, carving a brand new artery through the desert, and investors started circling like hawks. It was enough to make me dream bigger. No longer just a gas station, I envisioned a boutique roadside resort, where travelers could stop for gas, taste fine wine, and hear the incredible story of a hidden treasure in the desert. But as Desert Star began to shine, another challenge emerged: my family. The news about the wine stash didn't stay hidden for long. Las Vegas is small when it comes to rumors, and soon enough, they found out. Their reactions were everything I expected: shock, envy, and then, of course, a belated, grasping attempt to stake their claim in my success. My mother called first. It was a Wednesday evening. I was standing by the newly installed gas pumps, testing the card reader, when my phone buzzed. I almost didn't pick up. Her voice on the line was trembling, a brittle weakness I wasn't used to hearing from her. Brandon, I heard about the wine stash. About Desert Star. Is it true? Did you really find all that? I squeezed the phone so hard it almost cracked. Yes, Mom. It's true. I did it. There was a pause, a quick intake of breath. Oh, Brandon. I'm so proud, she said, but it sounded forced, rehearsed, as if she'd practiced the line in the mirror. Your father wants to meet you. We need to talk about this. A treasure like that, you need support. Sutton Enterprises can help you manage it. Bring Desert Star into the family's hotel network. I let out a dry, humorless laugh. It tasted bitter in my mouth. Mom, now the family wants to help? After you all called this place the graveyard of my career? After Dad, Parker, and Sydney mocked me every chance they got? Brandon, don't say that, she snapped, a crack in her calm mask. We were just worried about you. Your father thinks this is a chance for the family to work together. You shouldn't do this alone. I could feel a rock settling on my chest, pressing down. Yeah, I said, voice flat, I'm not interested. And I ended the call before she could try again. My mother's words weren't support. They were control, disguised as concern. They wanted me back under the Sutton banner, a trophy they could brag about at their cocktail parties. But I wasn't going back. A day later, Parker tried. He didn't even have the guts to call me. He sent a long text instead, starting with a greasy, fake pat on the back. Brandon, who'd have thought you'd get so lucky? $1 million wine stash. But be careful, managing big money isn't easy. If you need, we can sit down and talk investments. Lucky. He thought this was luck? I deleted the message without replying, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then came Sydney, calling in her syrupy voice that had fooled so many. Brandon, she sang, I hear Desert Star is a big deal now. I could help redesign the store, make it more upscale. I know some great contractors. Sydney kept going, her voice as smooth as the silk dresses she designed. And I'd even do it at a discount for you. I shut that down immediately, keeping my tone as cold as I could manage. No, Sydney. Thanks, but I'll handle it myself. There was a beat of silence, like she couldn't believe I'd actually said no. Brandon, you're being unreasonable. I'm being clear. I cut in. I don't need your help. I hung up, my hands trembling from holding back the anger. But the biggest confrontation was still ahead. My father summoned me to his office at Sutton Enterprises. Just hearing that made my stomach knot, but I went. I wasn't the same Brandon who used to flinch under his gaze. His office was as intimidating as I remembered, polished mahogany walls, glass awards lined up like trophies, the Sutton legacy on full display. He sat behind that massive desk, the same one I'd stood before as a boy while he lectured me about real business. Except this time, his eyes weren't just cold. There was something else there, a sliver of curiosity, maybe even a reluctant respect. Brandon, he started, his voice low and measured, I was wrong to doubt you. This wine stash, it's a miracle. But you need to understand something. This is bigger than you. A project of this scale is beyond your ability. Let Sutton Enterprises help you manage it. We have the resources, the experience. For the first time, I looked him square in the eye, refusing to shrink. Thank you, Dad. I said, steady, my heart pounding, but I can handle it. Desert Star is mine, and I'm keeping it that way. He didn't speak for a long moment. His expression didn't shift much, but I saw a muscle in his jaw twitch. Finally, he nodded, slow and reluctant, but I could tell he hated it. He didn't say he was proud. That was fine. I didn't need him to be. To him, everything belonged to the Sutton name. But I wasn't the boy desperate for his approval anymore. I was Brandon Sutton, the man who turned an abandoned gas station into a miracle, and I wasn't letting anyone take that from me. In the months that followed, I poured every drop of heart, sweat, and vision into Desert Star. With over $30 million from the wine auctions, I had the runway to dream big. Of course I considered Sutton Enterprises. It would have been the easy route, familiar, powerful, safe. But I couldn't let them fold me back under their flag, couldn't let them bury me under their legacy again. I wanted this to be mine. Instead, I reached out to Nevada Horizons, Sutton's biggest rival. They were known for bold, ambitious projects all over Las Vegas, from glittering hotels to cutting-edge casinos. Miss Carla Martinez, their CEO, agreed to meet me at an upscale restaurant downtown. She was exactly what I'd expected, sharp eyes, a confident posture, a smile that was both welcoming and calculated. After we ordered wine, I laid out my plan, an entertainment complex at Desert Star, with a high-end restaurant celebrating fine wine, a boutique hotel inspired by the desert, and a small casino themed around the Prohibition era, all woven together by the story of my incredible discovery. She listened without interrupting, fingers tapping lightly on her glass. When I finally finished, she sat back, appraising me like another one of her investments. Brandon, I have to say I'm impressed, she said, taking a measured sip of her wine. Your story, from an abandoned gas station to a multi-million-dollar treasure, that's the kind of narrative people love. And Desert Star's location, right on the new highway? That's a golden opportunity. I nodded, trying to stay calm, but adrenaline was racing through me. We want to partner with you, she continued. But are you sure you want to take this path? I hear your father wasn't exactly pleased when you turned down Sutton Enterprises. I felt a spark of tension tighten in my chest, but I forced a smile. Miss Martinez, I said steadily, I respect my father. But Desert Star is mine. I want to build it my way. Her eyes flashed with something, maybe respect, maybe excitement, but definitely approval. I understand. Miss Martinez nodded, her sharp eyes steady on mine. We'll provide support with funding, design, and operations, but you'll be the one leading. This is your project, Brandon. Those words made something in my chest loosen. For the first time in my life, someone with real power was willing to back me without trying to own me. Thank you. I told her, the relief in my voice impossible to hide. That's exactly what I need. And that was it. The deal was signed. Nevada Horizons committed $20 million, and I put in $10 million of my own to start building the Desert Star Entertainment Complex. From that day forward, I worked 16-hour days, sometimes more. I was out on the construction site at dawn, boots caked with dust, checking every blueprint, every delivery, every small detail. I was obsessed, but in the best way. Every brick laid, every light installed, was proof that I was more than just the failure of the Sutton family. I was building a legacy, brick by brick, that no one could ever take away. By June 2024, Desert Star was ready. Opening night was dazzling, hundreds of guests, from journalists to high-end wine collectors, to curious tourists drawn by the rumors of the hidden cellar. The air was electric. I stood by the restaurant entrance, wearing a tailored suit, my suit, paid for with my money, greeting guests as they streamed into Vintage Haven. The restaurant's chef, a genius I'd hired from San Francisco, had designed a gourmet menu that paired modern dishes with rare wines. At the heart of the dining room was a glass display counter, showing off a few of the best bottles from my treasure, lit up like precious jewels. People stood there, gawking, cameras flashing. It felt surreal. The boutique hotel upstairs had 50 rooms, decorated with a desert modern aesthetic and small details that nodded to the Prohibition era. Keys made to look like old brass, hidden bookcases, vintage radios. Every room felt like an experience, a story waiting to be told. The real showstopper, though, was the Speak Easy Star Casino. I watched people stream in through a hidden door styled like a storage closet, then walk into a glamorous, Prohibition-themed gambling hall with poker tables, slot machines, and even a jazz trio on the stage. All night, people laughed, played, drank, and shared the story of Desert Star, my story. Within weeks, the complex became a must-see destination in Nevada. Newspapers called it the new gem of the desert. Influencers and tourists took photos with the newly restored Desert Star sign, posted videos about the Prohibition stash, and praised the unique atmosphere I'd created. I'd built a team of pros, chefs, hotel managers, casino staff, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't just the guy running around with a half-baked idea. I was a leader. I moved out of that cramped apartment on the outskirts of Vegas. 2. I bought a spacious house in a quiet neighborhood, with a view of the open desert. Each night, I sat on my porch, looking out at the lights of Desert Star twinkling in the distance, and I let a calm peace wash over me. No more waking up in a sweat, afraid of failing. No more hearing my father's disappointed voice in my head. No more Parker's mockery or Sydney's condescending laughter. I had peace, not because of money, not because of fame, but because I had finally proven something, not to them, but to myself. Desert Star wasn't just a place. It was a testament, a monument to grit, belief, and refusing to let other people define me. Sure, my family tried to circle back in. My father stayed distant, still disappointed I'd chosen Nevada Horizons. Parker and Sydney never quite apologized, but they called from time to time with strained politeness. I kept it civil, but minimal. I'd forgiven them, but I hadn't forgotten. And it didn't matter. They couldn't touch me anymore. Because I, Brandon Sutton, had turned a forgotten gas station in the Nevada desert into a world-class entertainment complex. That was my legacy. And if you're asking me for advice, here's what I'd tell you. Never let doubts or mockery define you. The greatest opportunities might come from the ugliest, most unexpected places, a ruined gas station, a dusty old cellar. Believe in yourself. Seize those chances. Don't fear failure, because sometimes those failures lead you straight to the treasure of your life. Keep pushing forward, and I believe you'll succeed on the path you've chosen. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.